Well, ladies and gentlemen, there's been a lot of questions on the legitimacy of the initial report that was given by Donald Trump on the success of the bombing missions in Iran. And so now you've got the initial reports that come out from CNN and New York Times that say preliminary, they say, oh, it didn't destroy any of the centrifuges. The uranium is safe. You've got Hegseth now punching back against the media, talking about the strikes, talking about the original diagnosis and the overall damage. And then Trump commenting on it and saying, listen, it's like, oh, there's these aerial photos of all these trucks. It's like, yeah, they're dump trucks. They're there to move piles of dirt on top of the ventilation shafts and the opening. And that was reported. And I had said that a few days ago. And now Trump says it because it's widely known. The media was like, well, they're moving all their enriched uranium. You have to understand, when you look at Fordo, because that's where the aerial shot was, it was of Fordo 2 days before the actual event. And it's like, oh, they're moving everything out. They would have already had all of their enriched, or at least most of their enriched uranium, moved out of the site long before even Israel struck Iran with the preliminary strikes. But even right after, of course, you would move it out. The point is that you can undercut the creation of a nuclear bomb if you destroy specific facilities, if we know those are the only facilities that they have in terms of different steps of the nuclear bomb making process, like Estevan, which is a facility that's specifically designed for the conversion of uranium. There's two different conversion processes that have to happen of the uranium to actually make it nuclear. And so if you've destroyed their conversion, enriched their conversion facility, it's impossible for them to get a nuclear bomb without rebuilding the facility. Now, you might say, well, they've got hidden facilities. This is based off of U.S. intelligence and what Steve Witkoff said. So think about it. People say, well, they moved their enriched uranium. Yes, you can transport enriched uranium. They likely moved it well before. Fordo was one of the most obvious sites. I mean, there's a 15-year-old plan going back to 2009 where it's reported there's a construction project in Iran. U.S. intelligence knows about it. We've got to be careful. We know the fortress that they call it. We know it's underground. We know it's highly fortified. They've talked about it. Iran knows this. Their intelligence understands. Everyone was saying that was going to be the initial target with the B-2s if they decided to go that route. So all of it was already known. And it wasn't about them saving their enriched uranium, whether it's at 60%, 90%, 80%, whatever it's at, because people will tell you different things. It's at least at 60% verified. The point of it was to undercut the actual facilities that allow them to go nuclear, like being able to miniaturize, like the conversion. And so they've destroyed and also they're like, well, they moved the centrifuges. You're not moving centrifuges. It's extremely difficult to move centrifuges. Those centrifuges, when you drop B-2 bombs in ventilation shafts, that's going to destroy a lot of their centrifuges. Now, I don't know what, the initial report is saying in terms of, oh, most of them are okay, and whether that's Iranian intelligence or whoever it is. I mean, we don't know for sure, but if you drop B-2 bombs in ventilation shafts of nuclear facilities that are underground, there's going to be a lot of things that are destroyed. And again, we don't know the total extent of the damage, but you've got a reporter, wow, that's a Fox News reporter, talking about how highly enriched uranium was moved. It was already admitted, yeah, they probably moved most of it. It's irrelevant. You can have 60% enriched uranium, but until you rebuild certain facilities that allow you to go nuclear, because it's not just getting 90% enriched uranium, boom, you've got a bomb. That's not how it works. That's not how the creation of a nuclear bomb it really works. So we understand that, and people think it's like, well, they have their enriched uranium, they'll be safe. Listen, it's pretty obvious, and I know Trump has been talking and hinting at like a actual final, resolution to this Iran saga. It seems not. I'm just not seeing how Trump can say that. It doesn't seem like we're anywhere close to an end, because what's going to happen is there's going to be a hidden facility. They obviously still have their enriched uranium, whether it's 60%, 70%, 90%, whatever it is. And they're going to start pushing again. And I know Trump is saying, well, I don't think they're going to push anymore. It's not going to happen. You have to think they're going to, considering they just got struck and now they feel very threatened by the United States and Israel, and they're claiming victory against the United States and Israel because, of course, they are in their 12-day war, when in reality, I mean, it has been reported that Israel and Tel Aviv were struck really hard. They're like banning photos out of Israel. They're saying, no, it's going to kill morale worldwide. We want to appear stronger on a world stage. And so Israel does that. And they did hit him with hypersonic missiles. And Israel was like, whoa. And now there's other reports saying, well, Trump kind of bailed out Israel by the ceasefire. I mean, this is the fog of war. You know, I've also heard stuff to where they were saying Iran was running out of missiles. So like this whole stuff about Israel getting pummeled, and it's a he said, she said thing when it comes to this. I mean, it's just who you believe. So let's just play this on what Hegseth said. Hegseth very upset here with this question, and I'll just explain really what's going on.
It's about highly enriched uranium. Do you have certainty that all the highly enriched uranium was inside the Fordo mountain, or some of it, because there were satellite photos that showed more than a dozen trucks?
What a stupid question. So you're talking about, this is what they're insinuating with a question like that. You're saying, do I have verifiable intelligence and proof that 100% of the enriched uranium within the country of Iran was in the Fordo site when it was struck? That's what you're asking me? It's irrelevant if they have enriched uranium. We've destroyed the facilities that allow them to go through the stages of producing a nuclear weapon. That's what the administration should say if that's true. And Witkoff said that's basically what it was, and I'm summarizing what Witkoff said on Fox News a few days ago. But this woman's like, oh, they still have enriched uranium. Yeah, it's irrelevant. Just because you have enriched uranium, even if, I mean, if you have 60% enriched uranium, that's not even enough to have a nuclear weapon, but there's many different processes that take place. But I think, you know, we understand whether these strikes were 100% successful, whether they're less successful than the administration is letting on, whether the initial intelligence report on them being less successful. This is going to be a longer saga because it's still the same regime. They're still going to be likely going for a nuclear weapon, even though Trump says right now they're not going to. And so we can see this being some type of drawn out thing. And the question is, does Israel start fear-mongering the United States, saying, well, now they're racing towards the bomb. We found these extra facilities they have hidden. They've got the enriched uranium. They took it out of Fordo months before the strikes. Is that going to come out? It's like, yeah, they can move their enriched uranium. They can't really move centrifuges. I mean, you can, but it's extremely difficult to transport centrifuges. So, but like this question, it's like, yes, they moved some of their enriched uranium. Of course they did. They moved it months before. They probably moved it right when the Trump administration started talks with Iran and said 60 days or else. And then day 61, Israel preemptively strikes them. So
there 2 days in advance. Are you certain none of that highly enriched uranium was moved?
Of course, we're watching every single aspect. But, Jennifer, you've been about the worst. The one who misrepresents the most intentionally what the president says. I'm familiar.
I reported about the ventilation shafts on Saturday night. And in fact, I was the first to describe the B-2 bombers, the refueling, the entire mission with great accuracy. So I take issue with that.
I appreciate you acknowledging that this was the first the most successful mission based on operational security that this department has done since you've been here, and I appreciate that. So we're looking at all aspects of intelligence and making sure we have a sense of what was where.
Why not?
right, so he's obviously unhappy. Look, the thing is with the enriched uranium, of course it's going to be moved. You can transport it. Why would they not move it out of a facility that is 100%, if the United States decides to do it, is 100% going to get struck? And so you've also got this. U.S. worked on plan to destroy Iran's Fordo for 15 years. Now there's European intel saying the stockpile was moved. Well, of course it's going to be moved. You can move it. I mean, what do you think? The point is we want to undercut their ability. I mean, especially if they're at 60%. You know the infrastructure buildup that's required to enrich uranium in general? If they're stuck at 60% enrichment, and these centrifuges have been destroyed to the point of what Trump is saying, and maybe they're not. I mean, we don't know. There's conflicting reports. It's going to be very hard for them to enrich again. They're going to have to rebuild. But you can say, well, we're going to be here in 10 years or whatever. We're going to be here until there's a Israel gets their way and there's a regime change. Is that what we're talking about? The point of it is let's just be done with Trump and this administration's involvement in this situation. I think that's what we're hoping. And then Trump said, well, we don't even need a nuclear deal because there's no nuclear program. Well, obviously, they still have enriched uranium somewhere. The question is it 60% enriched? Is it 90% enriched? How much of their nuclear infrastructure was actually destroyed with these strikes? Because there have been reports somehow a lot of the centrifuges within Fordo were not destroyed. But I mean, how realistic is that? Are we really going to believe that? Who knows? And by the way, Trump actually addressed it. He says, it's in this, he says, the cars and small trucks at the site were those of concrete workers trying to cover up the top of the shafts, and they were also covering up the entrance of the site itself. Right, so to mask the weak points in terms of it getting struck. That's what it was. That's not how you move enriched uranium from dump trucks. It would have already been moved. They're like, we got it. The dumb Trump administration allows them to move all their enriched uranium days before. No, they moved it, I'm sure, months before. And they're trying to cover up everything to mask it, but it's that they knew the strikes were coming, so it would take too long, too dangerous, and very heavy, hard to move. I think Trump was mentioning the enriched uranium. Well, certainly the centrifuges. You're not moving the centrifuges. The enriched uranium, it can be moved at least partially. I don't know. I don't know how much of their stockpile within Fordo was moved, but the point is hopefully that the administration has undercut them from the actual conversion process being able to create a nuclear bomb, because it's not just enriching, although even with enriching, you need a massive infrastructure buildup to be able to do it. If they've destroyed a lot of that infrastructure, it's going to be hard for them to enrich properly again. But we can see this is a very complicated, messy situation. You're not going to get an ironclad, they have no enriched uranium, or they have no ability to produce a nuclear weapon. You can say that, but there's no ironclad proof that's ever going to be shown that that's the case. So it just becomes this waiting game of, okay, we have a ceasefire right now. At what point, because again, there have been reports that Israel was getting trampled with those hypersonic missiles getting through the Golden Dome. And Trump was like, well, we need this ceasefire to help Israel. But then, with Iran, they were obviously in a very bad spot as well, considering the United States was actively bombing Iran and helping Israel, even if it was just the nuclear facilities. We'll have to see what comes of this in terms of what's left of their nuclear program. It's going to depend on different intelligence reports. But in terms of these strikes not being successful, can we get some actual intel on why that would be the case? If you're dropping... can there at least be a diagnosis of understanding why MOBs would not significantly damage an underground site where these things explode 50 feet, 200 feet below the surface, and you're dropping them inside of ventilation shafts? Is there any analysis on why that would be the case? They're like, oh no, they didn't blow up in the proper spot, or like, maybe there was a problem with reinforced walls, or I don't know. So they're going to have to say something. They just say, well, we've got reports. It didn't destroy any of the centrifuges, and it didn't do a lot of damage. But, how do you believe that based on what was dropped? So either way, we'll have to see in terms of, what comes out of this with more intelligence. It seems like a mess, and hopefully somehow there'll be an extended period to where we don't have to worry about this, because I don't think it's very good. For the administration, certainly you can spin it as a win in terms of no U.S. casualties, very little damage to, basically no damage to any U.S. bases in the Middle East, and a potentially destroyed Iranian nuclear program, although there's going to be more to the story. You can't just say it's been completely destroyed, even though Vance and Trump have both said that. And the reason you could maybe say that is because if you've destroyed the conversion centers, technically they can't create a nuclear, but they would have to rebuild conversion facilities and enrichment centers as well, because again, it takes ridiculous investment and ridiculous infrastructure buildup to have enrichment facilities to get to 90% uranium enrichments. But listen, I'm sure they moved some of the uranium, but it's like this big gotcha. Well, of course, what are they, dumb? They're just going to keep all of their... it is hard to move. Trump is right. Even enriched uranium is tough to move, but it's in a solid form, so it can be done. And, it's a lot easier to move than centrifuges, for sure. So they had to have destroyed a lot, we would imagine. But this is going to be a thing to where Israel is going to say, well, no, they're still creating. I mean, it's just never ending. It's like never ending until there's just some. This is the Middle East for you. This is really what it is. It's like, you know what? We did enough. We're done. That's what Trump needs to say. And I think that's honestly what he's saying. But right now, Trump, it's like he thinks that their program is completely destroyed. And I guess that's the intel he's getting. But he did also say yesterday there were conflicting reports now. So maybe he's walking it back a little bit. But we'll have to see what ends up happening with this situation. Guys, make sure you like the video down below. Also follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.